SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
In this lecture, we are going to discuss about how we analyze a visual. When we talk about analysis, we basically indicate into the critical analysis, how we critically analyze a visual while making and also while we view the image. So this is one process where we put our planning under different category, and we see that how we are planning out a visual arrangement. So in that way, there are quite a few steps that we follow. If we go by the general process, if we are developing certain design, certain arrangement, keeping the viewer in mind, we of course like always do that, but sometimes the artist may feel that the user group or the viewer, those the artist is addressing at, we just feel that they can be less in number. We can also address a larger community, a larger user group. So it totally depends on whom we are aiming at. We can work for children as artists. We can also address to a older age group. There can be expression that is made for all, regardless of their age, their ethnicity, their race and other factors. So one artist has to be a little more clear about which viewer group they're addressing at. And with that, the planning becomes much more logical and also like reasonable. So in that level, we can understand how we go by the pressure, because we do not know what the viewer is having in their mind. The viewer also do not know what the artist is having in their mind. In the first few lectures, we try to see how the artist is thinking, or we try to just make a guess that what is playing at the mind of the artist. But every time that is not what we should only look at. So we will see what are the things that we need to consider when we critically analyze any visual image, and that makes our work much scientific, much more strategic, and we go by a proper rule. So there are quite a few things that I would like to discuss. And there are processes which are also inclusive with each other. So we can always follow 2-3 processes together, we can merge them. It's not that all the rules are compulsory, but it totally depends on the context we incorporate in our artworks. So we often analyze the artwork into 3 different layers. One is in its semiotic plane, then in its iconic plane, and thematic plane. And the semiotic, iconic and thematic plane, they do not follow any order. So it totally depends on the image that we are viewing, and as we know the context, we slowly get into the different planes of it. Now, the most interesting thing about the semiotic plane is that we do not need any information that is related to its thematic or the iconic plane. So if we look at an image, and we have no clue about the artist who has made it, or the time period when it is made in, or any other things, the medium that the artist must have used, or the size the artist must have used, then also in that condition we can simply go by the basic semiotic approach. Now, when we say what is the semiotic approach, this is also very basic, that how we approach towards certain thing with certain preconceived notion that we have in our mind, but most of the time we approach fresh. So when we are approaching afresh, what we incorporate, what we include in our vision is nothing but the basic knowledge that we have about the quality of line, the quality of texture, the quality of color, the color combination, the color use. There can be the kind of considerations about the form, what the formal qualities are. So that way we can analyze a whole visual and also get something out of it. We can enjoy it thoroughly without any clue of whoever has made it. So this is kind of a very qualitative understanding that we develop by just looking at it. And we approach it that way. So that tells us whether the artist wanted to create some illusion into the space, if there is at all any illusion that is getting created, how that is getting created, whether like the artist wanted to create a linear perspective or aerial perspective, or many other kind of possibilities are there. So what we have learned so far in our previous lectures, that has by now made us quite equipped that we can make understanding in the semiotic level. But we cannot only go by semiotic level in most of the cases, because maybe semiotic level is quite self-sufficient in that sense. But still we have certain other expectation, the expectation through knowledge. So with this particular knowledge, where we are approaching towards a basic principle and through the basic elements, we also need to know the history, the context, and that way it just happens that in the iconic level, what we see is that we end up talking about the basic symbols and the meaning, symbol specific meaning of certain images. Now, we may or may not have a knowledge of the symbols that are present there. For example, if we see a color combination which is with saffron and green in a color palette, maybe we have a bit of white and a pinch of blue also there, that may be associated with the Indian flag, and that will somehow inculcate patriotism to the mind of the Indian people. But that doesn't always mean that the same emotion will be generated to the people who are not familiar with this kind of a color scheme and they do not connect it with the nationalism. So that way things are very culture specific. Some particular color, for example, maybe when we pick up a color like black or white. Now, black is auspicious in some culture, black is also inauspicious in some culture, white is used for auspicious things in most of the cultures, and white is also inauspicious in some of the cultures. So that way, the identity, the associations and the meaning that we get out of it, when we conduct some visual analysis, they come into some specific meaning, and those meanings are iconic. One needs certain knowledge in that particular cultural field to understand that meaning. So that way, not all expressions are universal. So not always we can create a total analysis with the help of semiotic understanding, but we can always place it this way, that the semiotic understanding is done, and then we need to acquire more knowledge to conduct more understanding to the iconic level. Similarly, in the thematic level, we need to have certain information from different sources. So when we say that there are sources of information, there are also 3 different sources that we usually talk about. So if our aim is to get the truth is we see things the way it is. So we know white as white, we know black as black, and so on. So this truth, to achieve this truth, we need to have quite a few steps. So the sources of truth is perhaps, one is from the direct experience, the other one is by assumption, What is this assumption? That we see the road is wet and then we guess that it rained last night. And then from the books, published materials, myths, epics, from all sort of reliable sources. So in the thematic level, the artwork will come with some kind of a cultural influence and also from the historical sources. So in like when we talk about the thematic level, we incorporate a few other knowledge into that, that the artist who has made it, which culture the artist belonged to, which country the artist is born, which movement, which art movement the artist was a part of, or which medium he used, at what point in his life he has created that. So these are the thematic aspects that may also add some very good visual clue to analyze the images that are present to us. And also in that level, we conduct another very important analysis where we alter images. We try to mentally shift images from one side to another side. Maybe we have certain object here, we feel that had it been in some other place, what would it have been? So that's another way of looking at it, that we displace it a little bit and see that why the artist has done it. So that way we try to justify the artwork and also we try to understand the justification of each placement, each visual arrangement. So this is how we combine these layers, the semiotic, iconic and thematic plane, with the kind of knowledge that we are available with, and then we conduct some kind of an analysis. But there are also other processes where things are much more analytical, where maybe if we just pick up the formal analysis, which is conducted in 4 steps by Feldman, that is another very popular visual analysis that is being made. So let's talk about all those aspects also. So we are going to discuss the theory, the tools, the types, and the kinds. So the tool of critical art analysis or the tool of critical visual analysis incorporate a wide range of things. So maybe somebody needs to be quite widely familiar with artworks. The more we develop our connection with the existing artworks, the more we become equipped to understand and visual things, because it's observation based, and the more we see, the more observant we become, and we cannot deny that primary tool that we carry with ourselves. So also, like, we can develop that very quickly with our knowledge of history of art. We can read and enrich our understanding. We read about the different movements, different time periods in history, and that way we know, we become more confident. We are also become like we be in a stage to comment with more visionary statements for the future. So if you know the past, we know that what needs to happen now. So we know our time, we know what is good for the future, what we are doing, that we can justify in a much more way. So when we look at some artwork, we can always say that this is something which is good perhaps, but that doesn't fit our time. So knowing the time, knowing the history makes it very rich. So we cannot deny the importance of these tools. And apart from that, as we say that we develop connection through the direct experience of viewing original artworks. The more we see, the more equipped we become. And then we also need to see reproduction with proper information from different sources, from books, from libraries, from internet, and from many different sources. And also, like the more we visit the museums, the studios, the galleries, the see the performances and other things that are live, and also connect it with a social and cultural context in a daily basis, it becomes much more easier for us to develop our tools. It's more like, we sharpen our tools that way. So the opinion of the critics and the scholars during the basic period, the principal period, that is another study that we sometimes conduct, that we read visual analysis done by other people, that provides us with some kind of a clue that, how the criticism had been. And also we can justify whether those criticisms were right, those analysis was justified for that time or not. So there are tools that are available, and we develop tools in that way. But the most important things in that way, that we should also know that in what purpose we are working. So we come down to the next level, that is the type of art criticism that takes place in the culture. So there are four main types of art criticism. One is the journalistic criticism, then pedagogic, scholarly, and popular. In journalistic criticism, we try to produce a report. This is more like when we are less judgmental. We just just produce a report that this is what is taking place, and as we write the journal, we try to report what is happening and how they are taking place, in which context this is put up. So this is more like we put things in a very passive manner, and we want more people to come and then generate their view there. So there we follow a method and come down to the conclusion in a very journalistic manner, that we are producing something. We also like this is more like we try to go by the information that is connected to that. Whereas in the pedagogical criticism, we are more academic. So when we think of that academic art criticism or the pedagogical art criticism, our interest there is that we go by quite a few steps which are academic, and that will educate people in that trend or that kind of artwork. So when we talked about the semiotic level of art criticism, or like we put it as the layer, that is part of the pedagogical art criticism, because there we go by the educational method, and we are going to talk about that in a like more formal way when we conduct the other analysis. So it's like in the academic criticism, we make judgments which are also derivatives of the statements that is there. So it's more scientific and logical. This is research oriented, at the same time very clear and direct. Whereas in the scholarly criticism, we behave like the experts. When we create the criticism where we are acting as a scholars, we can always make kind of a prophetic statement. But the scholarly criticism takes a lot of experience. So you cannot just start with the scholarly criticism from the beginning unless you have a lot of exposure into the field, and you also know how things have been conducted before. So that way scholarly criticism is more visionary. We make end statements, and that is how it is. Sometimes we also incorporate quite a few scholarly critical points into the judgment part in the pedagogical art criticism. And then there are popular art criticism. That is also something which is very interesting, that we just go by the public opinion, what the people say. And if we just put it this way, that it might have a lot of history, or this is justified in the cultural context or the social context, but what the people like we are going by that. So popular art criticism is also quite vast, and we get to see that people are writing their columns on art, and they're coming up with opinion. Not all of them are thoroughly educated in the field of art, but they're quite prompt with their own understanding. So popular art criticism is more reactive and intuitive in nature. And apart from that, there are other things that we need to discuss, that is other part. So when we say that there are different types of judgment, there are also some kinds of judgments, and those are certain things that we need to know very specifically. So there are three basic kinds of critical judgment that is used in a normal situation. One is the formalism or the formal method that I mentioned earlier also, that is basically prescribed by Feldman, and there are other theorists also who have given opinion on that, but that is quite convenient for most of the people, and that is a basic thing that we conduct usually. So in that formalism or the formal art criticism, when we say that we are analyzing a visual in terms of its form, the formal arrangement, we go by quite a few steps. The steps are basically like when we go by the 4 steps method, we describe the thing, and that is like a passive description without any comment, any judgment. We just look at the visual image and we first describe what is there. So if we can associate certain part which are otherwise like not so non-objective, then we try to recognize them. We also try to read the visual arrangement without making any comment there. It's just the description. Sometimes we just pick up that particular step and put it in a description part, like when we are developing a museum catalog, for example, what we do that we show the painting and just write the description so that people get to see it, they find out things much faster. So that is a helpful tool, but that is only the first step of this formal analysis method. And the second step provides us with some freedom of analysis. So in that step, we analyze and we try to see what is there inside. So there we are prompt in dismantling certain part, putting them back, and as we were saying that we alter, we try to justify, and that is all about how we analyze them. Analysis is something, where this is very important to know that there are different approaches. People who believe in realism, they do not believe in reconstruction. So their thing is that whatever is there in nature, they will follow that. Whereas there are also some other opinion where we look at images as building blocks, they're units. So if they're units, and when we talk about visual harmony, that means the units are put together as building blocks and the image got constructed. So if somebody is believing in that construction of an image, they can also think of a reconstruction. So that's how we analyze, that's how we generate our opinion. And in the third step, we interpret, we try to get meaning out of things in our own ways as viewers. So in visual analysis, we try to interpret, we try to make meaning, we go by assumption. We feel that this is, if something looks like that, the artist must have meant it to be like something else. So interpretation is one point, that is also the next point from the general analysis. And finally, we just put the entire thing and come up with our own judgment. That is more like a conclusive statement that we come up with. And the judgment can become very scholarly at times. So that way we put our vision, our visionary statements, we are free to somehow analyze our assumptions. We try to, that is what is known as the hypothesis testing in that level, and finally the judgment is ready there. So that is one kind of art criticism that is very popular, and we call it the formalism. And there are two different criticism. One is expressivism and instrumentalism. So in expressivism, the formal arrangement takes a little more flexible turn. So when we are describing or interpreting, judging, and also analyzing, we keep in our mind that there are lots of things that are taking place there, which are for the sake of expression. So there, when expression is predominant, or our basic aim is to express the ideas, we can take some freedom of distortion. And those are the artistic distortion that we have discussed earlier also, that we simplify or we exaggerate, we complicate for the sake of a better expression. So in that kind of analysis, what happens that we also play a role where we already have this thematic and iconic understanding in our mind. We know the symbols very well. If a certain particular symbol is there, the meaning is also there in our mind. Or also in the thematic level, we know that the artist belongs to a particular group, which is perhaps American abstract expressionism or the German expressionism or post-impressionism and all those categories. So that knowledge tells us that these are the artwork where we cannot just go by the basic semiotic understanding, and if we say that a particular limb is overstretched, we cannot put it as the mannerist tendency in that way. But that is done for the sake of it. So it was done for the sake of expression. So we wanted the expression to be emphasized and heightened. So that way, expressivism is one tool and one kind of criticism that is like a genre. That way, there are many artists who would just see the artworks from the expressionistic point of view. At the same time, there is another art criticism which is also not very different from that. That is the instrumentalism. Instrumentalism is the concept where we are instrumental with a particular ideology. So you have a fixed ideology in your mind. So every time as a critic, when you are viewing the artwork, you have that particular ideology working in your mind. For example, if we are instrumental in Marxism, or we are instrumental in feminism. So every time we look at an artwork, we will have a point of view that will be indicative of that particular ideology. So anything we see, we will have a feminist point of view or the Marxist point of view. So that way, instrumentalism is all about the ideology that we are holding as the critic, as the visual reader, and we can come down to that kind of a solution that everything that is happening, I will see it from my point of view. So these are also different kind of art criticism. But the formal analysis steps that I'll write down for your information, and you can follow those steps and get amazing results. You can analyze all visuals with this knowledge. So I'll just write down the steps and you follow it. So with this much of knowledge, we can enrich our regular reading. And in the next lecture, that is our last lecture, we are going to see how you go by a problem-solving process. When we know how the visual analysis is going to take place by our viewer, when we know our user group very well, and we also know that the problems that come to us have multiple layers, multiple facets, multiple complexities. So in that situation, we also need to cater to the audience as the designer, as a graphic artist. So everything which is related to visual representation is not symbol specific. There are lots of symbols which are there. There are signs, symbols, and many other things, but that is not the only thing. So we need to go by our general understanding, our social intelligence, and see how we can produce appealing visual with the use of all these tools that we have got got so far. And also, there is another thing that we need to keep in mind, that it's not just one kind of visual that we would produce, because there are different demands, and we may also feel that we should be versatile as designers. So for like when we know the elements of visual representation so clearly and specifically, we should also develop some bit of a flexibility, that we come up with different solutions for a single problem. So it's not just a single problem. Maybe the problem is one, but there can be multiple solutions. And we will see how successfully we can solve all those problems.